Iran and the IAEA to resume nuclear cooperation. Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog reached an agreement, putting a cooperation between them back in the full throttle in the wake of a state visit by the agency's chief. Iran expressed readiness to provide further information and access to address the outstanding safeguard issues referring to uranium traces at the undeclared sites, said a joint statement by the International Atomic Energy Agency and Iran in support by Reuters, the agency reported Saturday. Tehran, according to the joint statement, will allow the UN nuclear watchdog to implement further verification and monitoring activities, and the modalities regarding the issue would be agreed upon in the course of a technical meeting that the joint statement said would take place in the Iranian capital soon. Furthermore, the IAEA issued a report regarding Iran's nuclear activity after the joint statement between the Islamic Republic and the UN agency, saying the watchdog's chief looked forward to the follow-up technical discussions and prompt and full implementation on the joint statement. Furthermore, Grossi said he welcomed Iran allowing the agency to implement further verification and monitoring activities, adding that he believed that his agency could start implementing concrete measures very soon, and that some monitoring equipment will begin operating again. He underlined that one key thing that came out of the agreement, which he said was a tangible result of the trip to Tehran, is that we've agreed that we're going to be moving on to concrete access to things, including people of interest. Grossi's two-day visit came as the Vienna-based organization seeks greater cooperation with Iran on its nuclear activities. By having a constructive discussion and having good agreements like I'm sure we're going to have, we're going to be paving the way for important agreements, Grossi told a news conference alongside Iran's top nuclear official Mohammad Eslami after talks with the official. I believe that a marked improvement in terms of my dialogue with the Iranian government has been registered, the IAEA chief added in the joint statement. We've put a tourniquet on the bleeding of information and lack of continuity of knowledge we had. He also explained that the IAEA and Tehran agreed that the issue of knowledge continuity was going to be addressed, saying there would be 50% more inspections at the Fordow plant. In very few days, we'll have a team in Iran, Grossi added. Monitoring equipment will be reinstalled in a number of places. Grossi arrived in Iran on Friday amid a stalemate in talks to resurrect a landmark 2015 agreement on Iran's nuclear activities, known formally as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. A diplomatic source told AFP the IAEA chief would meet President Ebrahim Raisi during his trip to launch the dialogue on Iran's atomic work and to reset the relationship at the highest level. Grossi has made it clear that he would only travel to Tehran if he was invited to meet with the president, according to the source. According to an IAEA report seen by AFP this week, uranium particles enriched up to 83.7%, just under the 90% required to produce an atomic bomb, had been detected at Iran's underground Fordow plant about 100 kilometers south of the capital. However, Tehran denies wanting nuclear weapons and that it's made no attempts to enrich uranium beyond 60% purity. Iran's government noted that unintended fluctuations may have occurred during the enrichment process. The discovery came after Iran made significant changes to an interconnection between two centrifuge clusters enriching uranium without informing the IAEA. Islami called on other signatories to the 2015 agreement to fulfill their obligations at a joint press conference on Saturday. 3 European and some other countries are just focusing on Iran's JCPOA obligations, he told the news conference. They too have obligations that they need to adhere to. We come to an arrangement with Grossi to define our cooperation within the framework of the safeguards on nuclear activity. During his visit, the IAEA Director General sought more access to the Fordow site, more inspections, according to a diplomatic source, and it seems that he got what he wished for by the end of the visit. Iran's Raisi says UN nuclear agency must not be influenced by U.S. and Israel. This is AA.com. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi said Tehran expects that UN nuclear agency to carry out its mandate without coming under the political influence of powers that be. Raisi made the remarks in a meeting with the International Atomic Energy Agency chief Rafael Grossi, who is on a 2-day visit to Tehran. Raisi, as cited by Iran state media, told Grossi that Tehran expects the UN nuclear body to be wholly professional and not allow political powers to influence its activities. Iran's president singled out the U.S. and Israel as countries that have used nuclear issue as an excuse to put pressure on the Iranian nation, while indicting Israel for not signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. For his part, Grossi was quoted as saying that ill wishers are not in favor of bilateral cooperation between the IAEA and Iran without elaborating. In a Twitter post after the meeting, Iranian President's Deputy Chief of Staff Mohammad Jamshid said Grossi expressed satisfaction with the common agenda reached to pave the way for cooperation. President Raisi called cooperation of a two-way street that continues based on the agency's independence and fulfillment of the rights of the Iranian nation, he wrote. On day 2 of his visit, Grossi also held talks with Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian, the minister said, with both reviewing cooperation. Iran's top diplomat, the ministry said, emphasized the serious will of the Islamic Republic of Iran to solve the technical issues between Tehran and IAEA. Grossi stated the importance of diplomacy and dialogue to solve issues and welcomed any constructive initiative to help the progress and conclusion of the Vienna negotiations. Resolution of the issues earlier in the day at a joint press conference with Iran's nuclear agency chief Mohammad Islami Grossi said, Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog are cooperating and moving forward to resolve outstanding issues related to the country's nuclear program. Emphasizing transparency, Grossi said, the two sides must work together closely on guarantees and assurances regarding Iran's nuclear program. His visit came amid a stalemate in talks aimed at the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal, known officially as the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, with cooperation between Iran and the IAEA emerging as one of the key sticking points. Recent reports about Iran ramping up uranium enrichment up to 84% purity based on a leaked report by an IAEA inspector have also fueled tension between the two sides and sparked international concerns. Iran dismissed findings in the IAEA leaked report as a mistake and said the IAEA inspector in follow-up visit rectified it. The UN nuclear watchdog probe into what it claims are traces of uranium found that the 3 undeclared nuclear sites in Iran has also been a bone of contention between Iran and the West, complicating efforts to revive the nuclear deal that the U.S. abandoned in 2018. Grossi told reporters on Saturday that the two sides are working hard to resolve the issue related to the undeclared sites, adding that the leak of the IAEA reports make him angry and disappointed. IAEA not a political tool. As to comment on sabotage attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, which Iran has mostly blamed on Israel, the UN nuclear agency chief said any military action on nuclear power plants is condemnable and illegal. He also deflected criticism about the UN agency's non-political approach, as alleged by Iran, stressing that it's important and necessary for Tehran and the IAEA to communicate more directly. The agency has never been used as a political tool. We have board of governors and we don't take orders from anyone, Grossi hastened to add, obliquely referring to the U.S. and Israel. On why the agency does not monitor nuclear sites in Israel, the IAEA chief said inspections are based on agreements under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran has signed, but the Zionist occupation government has not, insisting that all countries should sign the treaty. Islami, for his part, said Grossi's visit, the first since March last year, is a message to boost communications and ties between the agency and Iran, adding that some countries seek to disrupt their cooperation. On the possibility of an anti-Iran resolution at the IAEA's upcoming quarterly Board of Governors meeting, Iran's nuclear agency chief said a decision on countermeasures will be taken if it takes place, adding the cooperation between them will continue. He also accused other signatories to the 2015 nuclear deal, namely the U.S. and European trio of the UK, France, and Germany, of not fulfilling the commitments under the agreement, which, he said, prompted Tehran to scale back its commitments and ramp up enrichment. The nuclear deal talks underway in Vienna since April 2021 are stalled since last August over issues related to Iran's cooperation with the IAEA, reports about Iran's drone supply to Russia, and recent month-long protests in Iran. Western countries have imposed a slew of sanctions on Iranian officials and entities in recent months, mostly related to protests in the country and drone shipments to Russia. And from EnglishNews.cn, Iranian president urges IAEA to adopt professional approach to Iranian nuclear deal. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said on Saturday he hopes the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, can adopt a professional approach to the Iranian nuclear issue and prevent certain countries from affecting nuclear watchdogs' decisions. Raisi made the remarks in a meeting with visiting Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, in the capital of Tehran, according to a report on the president's website. Countries like Israel and the United States use the nuclear issue as an excuse to further pressure the Iranian people, said the president, pointing out that it was the United States that violated the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and world powers. Iran has had the highest level of cooperation with the IAEA, expects the agency to tell the truth about Iran's nuclear program as well as the country's commitments of its regulations, he noted. Meanwhile, the IAEA chief expressed pleasure at visiting Iran and meeting the country's president, saying the IAEA's team, led by himself, had constructive and positive meetings with the Iranian side, according to the report. Grossi arrived in Tehran on Friday for a 2-day visit, during which he also held talks with Mohammad Eslami, president of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, and Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian. In recent months, the IAEA has criticized Iran for its lack of cooperation with the agency. In November 2020, the IAEA's Board of Governors passed a resolution proposed by the U.S., Great Britain, France, Germany, and it called on Iran to collaborate with the agency's investigators regarding the alleged traces of uranium at a number of its undeclared sites. Iran has repeatedly rejected such allegations and emphasized the peaceful nature of its nuclear program. Yeah, I think what we get from that gaggle of stories is this idea that they just switched from one centrifuge to the other, and that triggered the higher enrichment rate. Very interesting. And finally, from Press TV, their coverage on the Iran nuclear deal.
It was reported as a positive trip by the IAEA chief Rafael Grossi to Iran's capital, Tehran. Grossi hailed relations between Iran and the IAEA as positive after meeting with Iran's atomic chief Eslami and Iran's president Ibrahim Raisi. But underlying this trip, IAEA inspectors had reported Iran had enriched uranium close to 84%, which Iran had to then clarify. Why are there such reports which then require Iran to have to defend its stance? And why did Grossi, when asked whether the IAEA is a political tool at the hands of a few, would deny this to be the case? Just a couple of the angles we'll be looking at in this edition of the Spotlight. First, let me introduce our guest. Farshid Bagharian is a political analyst who joins us from Karaj. Also joining us is Don DeBar, who's an activist and commentator, joining us from Ossining in New York. Gentlemen, welcome. Farshid Bagharian, first over to you. We're looking at what was this trip that took 2 days in duration, of which it was, I don't want to use the word hailed, but it was widely reported to be very positive in terms of the cooperation, and some even called an agreement between the IAEA and Iran. But why should this be such a positive thing when you take a look at all the different hardships that Iran has endured based on giving itself that cooperation spirit and then not getting what it should have gotten in return?
Thank you very much, and have a good night. I believe that the International Atomic Agency took the Iranian cooperation as a granted, because Iran, during this talk and deal with Iran for the nuclear talks from 2015 till now, during this time, always Iranian did their duty. But the Western Europe, the Western powers, especially the United States, they didn't act as a friendly act to us. So I just see in some days before, Mr. Putin announced that he withdraw from the START 1 nuclear agreement with the United States. This is what the main reason of the trip of Mr. Gerossi to Tehran, because the escalation of the nuclear hazard or nuclear war all around the world, it make them to think about again for Iran, because the particle they found as 84% of enrichment is what merely was the particle, not the activity. And right now the report should be friendly, as they had a common briefing, press briefing, I think, and they told that the enrichment was 60%, and this is acceptable for us. It was acceptable before this trip, and right now they need some guarantee from Iran for not enrich anymore, or maybe help Russia, because Russia is merging for a new attack on the spring to the Ukraine, and the escalation of the nuclear hazard maybe they spread all around the world. This is the fact that they are approaching more friendly to Iran this time. This is the fact, not anything else, because Mr. Ned Price and Mr. Blinken speeches regarding, and their opinion was not friendly, and they told that we are waiting for the report from the Mr. Gerossi, and Mr. Gerossi is not the decision maker for the West, and just not bringing any he's not bringing any message from West to us. Just Mr. Gerossi is take them that Iran did his duty, and Iran is giving the guarantee to not support any nuclear, nuclear, how can I explain, nuclear hazard for the spread over the world. That is the fact that
Okay.
Mr. Gerossi was here. Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Well, Don DeBar, I guess there talked about 60% enrichment. I have so many questions to ask, but just on that particular note there was a press conference that Grossi had in Vienna just about an hour ago. And this is really interesting. He says on the 60%, the Iranians, don't need to tell us why they reached 60%. What's important, we have the necessary ability to inspect. Isn't that kind of an odd statement to come from the IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi?
It is an odd statement if you expect essentially that these, that the architecture of international relations is, an architecture of honest brokerage. But of course it's not. It's in the real world. The United States and the Soviet Union were the principal engines of the IAEA. Eisenhower is credited with it being his brainchild in 1957, but the United States didn't ratify the treaty and put it into effect as against the U.S. until 1967. The organization is centered in Vienna. That's in the heart of NATO, basically. And it has been, like the other instruments of international architecture based in Western Europe, an instrument of colonial control of much of the rest of the world. Look at the International Court of Justice and the other, the Hague judicial structures in general, which for some reason seem to prefer to indict African leaders over any other, potential defendants. The objective picture, going on right now is the United States is attempting to isolate each of its enemies between Russia, China, Iran in particular, and also South Africa and others that are beginning to see perhaps the objective requirement of some sort of military cooperation in the face of, an assault from the U.S. and NATO against all of them at once. There are the claims that Iran is sending drones and setting up manufacturing facilities for drones in Russia. There's the claim that China is considering manufacturing weapons for Russia, threats from the United States and all of that. This is the context in which Grossi holds his press conference. Remarkable, actually, is the fact that he didn't claim to find a nuclear suitcase when he was in Tehran and seek to have the U.S. invade and get rid of the weapons of mass destruction, because that is the pressure certainly coming from Washington at the moment.
Professor Bakhmut, taking a look at what question was asked by our Press TV correspondent to Rafael Grossi on the fact that whether the IAEA has been politicized in terms of the way information is given out, or that it's being used as a political tool, and in terms of just overall vis-a-vis Iran, how it's given out ambiguous statements. The response by Grossi was, I think any attack, any military attack on a nuclear facility is outlaw, is out of the normative structures that we will all abide by. And he wouldn't even acknowledge that Iran's nuclear facility was actually attacked by Israel on more than one occasion. I mean, this is Rafael Grossi of the past. I'm not too sure what type of transformation he's gone through from then since now when it comes to Israel. Of course, we need to also mention that he went to Israel before there was a resolution leveled against Iran through the Board of Governors in the past. Why is he playing that posturing when asked that question?
I believe that, first of all, thank to our friend. Fully agree with what he said. The fact is, Iran is right now, we have an expression in political science that means that sitting on the fence. Iran right now is sitting on the fence, and Iran can be declined to the right or the left. And that is the fact. Right now, it's terrifying the world. I mean, the nuclear talk is right now, they're terrifying the world. Because we can decline to the third, World War III. Maybe we can decline to the position that may push the war to the peace talk. This is the fact that right now, as you see, 1 or 2 days before, it was a news that in the media that Russia is trying to reach to the Persian Gulf or the Oman Sea. And they can consider that Russia is spreading its power to the whole, region. Regarding the Israel, and holding this point right now, regarding the Israel has a very vulnerable size, and Israel is not powerful. Despite of Iron Dome, and Israel is not a safe place for the Israeli people. And any conflict with Iran, through drones, through missiles, or any kind of the war machine, it would be very hazardous for the region, especially for the Israeli regime. So right now they are trying to push Iran down from the fence to the exact point or exact side that they want right now. And I want to repeat that Mr. Grossi is not the policy maker guy or the player. Just he sent his report, and Remember that before the September, after the September 11th, then they attacked Iraq, and after that, because they found some facilities and some site that they are producing chemical and biological and maybe a nuclear weapon, and after that they said that the FBI report was false.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Iran is not giving them any permission to give the false report, and this is the fact that Mr.
Sure.
Gerussi was here in Iran. And
All right. Don DeBar, as this news is spreading, because it's very fresh off the press, especially given this press conference that Rafael Grossi had in Vienna, a very simple question that comes out of this is, why should Iran trust, I'm not going to say the agency, but the other actors, in particular the U.S., when it comes to anything that has to deal with Iran's civilian nuclear file? I mean, why should there be optimism here, which Grossi is sending this message of optimism? Put that into context for us, if you can.
Yeah, there's a number of ways to do that. Very first, there's supposedly, I mean, there is already an agreement that was negotiated over a period of years with an awful lot of pressure from the United States, an awful lot of determination from Iran to protect its sovereignty, a participation of many others. Agreement was signed, executed, implemented, except for the part where Iran was supposed to get sanctions relief. That never really happened. Trump gets elected. He was campaigning against the agreement, and he abrogated what little participation the U.S. had done up to that point. And Biden ran against that, saying that Trump, was making trouble where there was no need for trouble, and that he shouldn't have withdrawn from the agreement. And now we're 2 years into Biden's administration, and we still are here playing this game instead of starting, where we were at on January 20th, 2017. That's the aspect with respect to the U.S. In 2014 and 2015, the United States, some 50 years almost 50 years after the execution of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which calls for the sunsetting of all nuclear weapons within a reasonable period of time, announces, in fact, it's going to spend $1 trillion to renew its nuclear arsenal. And I know that Mr. Grossi was not the head of the IAEA at the time, but I don't see any statement right now demanding that the United States cease and desist from that. Finally, in the context of the war in Ukraine, the nuclear doctrine of Russia was spelled out very simply, which is, number one, we will only use nuclear weapons if we are attacked with nuclear weapons or if the very survival of our state is threatened. And the U.S. response to that was to announce that they intended to take down the Russian state. If I were the head of the IAEA, I would then condemn the United States, first of all, for making this statement, and then tell them you have to do everything to back out of this condition so you don't provoke a nuclear war. And I don't see any of that happening. I see them nickel and diming Iran, impugning its integrity and sovereignty, and frankly, shilling for Israel.
Okay, so since both have mentioned Ukraine in this context in terms of Iran, Farshid Bagharian, are we looking at the fact that instead of anybody pinning their hopes on something coming out of all the positive, from what it appears to be positive news coming from Grossi, that this is just so Grossi, through the IAEA, which is one of the UN's organization, which the U.S. provides at least almost a quarter of its budget, that they just want to have some kind of watch over Iran's civilian nuclear program, but they're not going to give any type of room for Iran because they believe that Iran, which Iran has denied, is providing Russia with these, for example, drones.
I believe that the watchdogs group, prior to the trip of Mr. Grossi, was in Iran, and they expected everything. And so he was, how can I explain? It was a political show only, merely, and nothing else. But the friendly and positively report has not make sense for Iran, first of all, because we are facing another decision making. For example, right now, the Congress and the Senate of the United States has is not giving power to the Mr. Biden administration, Mr. Biden himself, for example, to sign any new agreement with Iran, and they have to pass it because the legitimacy of this, I mean, the agreement would be passed from the Congress, and they're very a blockage and obstacle for Iran for any new agreement for Iran. But I'm going to repeat again the fact is we are approaching a new world war, maybe hazard, because Mr. Gerasimov is right now is the head of the operation of the new spring attack to Ukraine, and the Gerasimov doctrine itself contains the using of the nuclear power, and that is the fact that the world is right now is being terrified, and in this position they want to how can I explain? To make Iran silence, to not cooperate with Russia as a strategic, I mean, tie or yeah.
Well, when you say this,
Watch this space. Remember, your engagement by way of a like, share, and subscribe will propel us, accelerate us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.